Welcome. We are going to discuss about the retrograde or the Vakri planets in Krishnamurti Paddhati. Now, not all the planets get into a retrograde motion. The the sun and moon, they are always direct. They are never retrograde. Similarly, Rahu and Ketu, they are always retrograde. That is what their natural motion is, the retrograde motion. So Rahu and Ketu are also not considered. So the only planets those are considered are Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. Now the rules to judge the Vakri planets in Krishnamurti Paddhati are very simple and straightforward. In the birth horoscope, the retrograde motion of the planet is not considered. And in the horary chart, there are specific KP rules for planets in retrograde motion. Sometimes you might find this strange that the kind of importance Krishnamurti has given to the retrograde planet in the horary chart, that kind of significance or importance is not given in the birth horoscope. But before we discuss this, first let's look at the horary rules. Now in KP horary, a specific query is assessed from two different steps. One is whether the matter is promised at all or not. It's a kind of a yes and no, black and white kind of an answer that first you have to seek about a specific query. And if the matter is promised, then only you proceed to the next step of finding significators. So this very first step, the yes and no, black and white kind of a step, is where the role of the planets when they appear as the Cuspal Sublord, and if they are retrograde, then those uh, their role becomes very crucial. So here is the summary of the rules. When primary Cuspal Sublord related to the query is direct and Cuspal Sublord star lord is also direct, then the step number one, rule number one, whether matter is promised at all or not, yes, it is promised at level 1, but you still have to judge the level 2 condition about finding the significators, whether the Cuspal Sublord is the significator or not. Let's take example marriage. So if somebody says, will I get married, and then you create a horary chart, and then you look at the seventh Cuspal Sublord, because that's the primary Cuspal Sublord related to the query marriage. So if it is in a direct motion and the Cuspal Sublord, the star lord is also direct, then you kind of say, okay, this first step indicates no problem, and then you look at whether the Cuspal Sublord is a significator of 2, 7, or 11 or not, and this is how then you move forward. But if at the very first step, if suppose the Cuspal Sublord is direct and the Cuspal Sublord star lord is retrograde, right? Then you say that the marriage is not promised. It indicates a failure. Then there is no need to proceed any further. You close the whole horary chart at that stage itself. Rule number three, when the Cuspal Sublord is retrograde and the Cuspal Sublord star lord is direct, and then you say, okay, this guy has to wait until the Cuspal Sublord becomes direct from its retrograde motion. And of course, when the rule number 2 is also positive, which means that the significators are positive, then you say, okay, this thing will happen, but only when the Cuspal Sublord becomes direct. Until then, one has to wait. And the fourth is when both are retrograde, then of course it just means a failure. So let me elaborate this by taking the fifth cusp. into our picture. This is just some kind of a chart, and but our focus has to be on the fifth cusp. Now, some of the questions related to the fifth cusp are: will I marry the person I love? Will I be successful in the Bollywood? So any childbirth, any gains from the stock market, or can I become a sports person? And there are other questions also related to the fifth house. So now, if suppose uh, these questions are given to you at various by different persons at various dates of the year, and then you have to solve it using a horary chart. And if suppose the sublord for the fifth cusp is Mercury, then some of the scenarios that you might have is are going to be this, right? Now, if the fifth cuspal sublord is Mercury, Mercury is direct, and the fifth cuspal sublord Mercury is deposited in, let's say, Sun's star. Sun, we saw that is always direct; it cannot be retrograde. So then the result at the first step, whether a thing is promised at all or not. Yes, it is. At the first step, it is promised, but still you have to assess at the second step. But let's assume that Mercury is retrograde, cuspal sublord of the fifth, and it is deposited in Jupiter star. That's also retrograde. Then at very first level, you say that this particular thing is not promised at all or not. So if a query is any childbirth and Mercury appears at the cuspal sublord retrograde, is in Jupiter star retrograde, then you say no childbirth. So this is how you make use of the retrograde rules, KP rules, for a horary chart. Now you can't possibly apply these rules in the birth horoscope. And why you can't do this? Let me show you why you can't do this. Now suppose this is, instead of a horary chart, this is a birth chart, and you are looking at the reading of a person's birth chart, and suppose Mercury, the fifth cuspal sublord, is retrograde in the birth chart of that person, and it is deposited in the Jupiter star, that's also retrograde. So if you apply the horary rules over here, then you say this person will never have love marriage, this person will never be successful in the entertainment industry, and this person has no chance of having a child, or this person will never have any benefits from the stock market. So this is going to be a very weird, kind of a prediction. So let me recap the rules once again. In the birth horoscope, retrograde motion is not considered in KP, and in horary chart, we have seen the rules. And one of the rules that I forgot to mention is about the ruling planets in the horary chart. So when you create a list of significators and you match it with the ruling planets, and if one of the ruling planets or one or more of the ruling planets, if they are retrograde and they are also deposited in the star of a retrograde planet, then you have to eliminate that particular ruling planet. It's not going to prove to be a tempter, so you have to eliminate that. And but one of the idea of this presentation was that don't apply the horary rules blindly in the birth horoscope. They don't work, they fail. And for this reason I created a video on the role and reliability of the Cuspal sublord KP astrology in the birth horoscope. So I'm going to mention the link in the description, so you might want to look at that video as well. So that's all in this presentation. Thanks for watching.